Okay, sure. Sure. I started recording on the computer. Yep. Okay. So this is different types of tests you can see all across. Okay. I'll just repeat it because getting is recorded. So static tests is something which is purely from the documentation perspective. So you don't run any code. You don't do any testing or execute anything. You just go from the documents you have. So you have your technical detailed designs and high level design documentation, you have your requirements documentation, and you have your low level code which you can use and define your test cases. Say suppose if there's a code saying that if A is less than B, then implement XYZ, else implement 1, 2, 3. So here from this documentation, you can understand that. So it's a branching logic. We have if true condition block and we have else block. So we need to ensure that it's happening for all the scenarios. Like it's both A branch is tested and B branch is tested. So, and this is something like you understand that, okay, there's a graphing up here. And the second thing is that, okay, when you're implementing this, if there's any better way to implement it, it should be done. So those are more like standards, efficiency of code writing, your cosmetics, your indentation, and more such things. So it's more very high level on the is before the implementation of the code. So those are static tests. And the dynamic tests are tests which your actual test cases when you're do a testing. So this can be broadly classified again as white box testing, black box testing, and gray box testing. So this is more of a nomenclature that usually uses. So this black box, you must have heard that these are usually in air flights where they record everything, the background logs and all, and then that is used for analyzing what has happened in the system or on the flight, and that would have caused any accident. So that's more usually that's where the black box is. So the black box is actually not black, it's an orange color, but still it's called black box because you don't know what is there in it, and you just use it to understand what has happened. So that's, you don't know what is there inside. So similarly, your code is more also like you don't know what's there inside the code, but you define your test cases. So how do you define your test cases? You define your test cases using your requirements documents. So these documents you use, and then you write your test cases and you execute the code to check whether it is working fine or not. So that is what the black box testing is. And white box testing is like, it's an opposite term for black box, and white box is more like, you know what's there inside. So this inside is nothing but your code. So when you run some utility and it is generating some reports, and if you don't know the code in the utility, it's called black box. If you really know and you can see the code and you can write some test cases from that, it's more of a white box testing. So white box testing is usually done by your developer. Yeah, and that's very correct. What Sudha, is it Sudha? Yeah.
No, Sridevi.
Sridevi, yeah, you're very correct. So white box is more than from the developer side, where they usually know the code, they know what breaks, what may not break, and which is their testing. So that's one part of it. And what is gray box? Gray is a shade in between your white and black, and you know a bit of code, you don't know a bit of code, and you still have to test it. So it's more like your, what I can say, your UI, where it's a web-based application, and you know the code which your developer has, but you're not aware of other parts of the code which your backend team or somebody has, but you still need to test that. Okay, I mean, there's someone coming in. Enter the waiting room. Rajesh?
Is someone waiting?
Yeah, I don't know who it is.
That is Rajeshwari, I think. Just admit her.
Hello, I mean, who has joined?
Is it Rajeshwari? I think still she didn't join the audio. I think I can't see the audio.
Yeah, it's not yet there. Okay,
yeah, carry on. Yeah.
Right. So the gray box is something like in between of white and black, where you know bits of code, you don't know any other parts of applications which are there internally linked, but you still write your test cases. So this is more like your regression test cases or integration cases where you actually write your bit piece of it and then check with other teams also, so that they're also working on it and their applications also consuming your part and then delivering, or if you're expecting something from them, they're actually passing it right. So that's gray box testing, and that's high level of it. Hope this is clear, right? Black, white, gray, static, dynamic.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So then we have a different testing here, which is called functional, non-functional. This is also very important, because functional testing is more you actually uh, more like, okay, so if I have to log into an application, I key in my credentials and I expect I be allowed inside. That's a positive case, right? That's a functional case. That's a positive test case. And say, suppose I key in wrong credentials and I should not be entering inside. That's a negative test case because I'm not expecting a positive result. And say, suppose there's another scenario where I key in wrong details and I keep repeating it and I still get access. That's a negative test case which is failing, which should not have happened. So these three are more like functional because you're testing on your accessing, or that is authorization and authentication part. That's more like functional testing. So what is non-functional testing? So non-functional testing is more like the response of the application time, the response time, like when you key in your credentials and Raj enter the waiting room. Okay. So yeah.
Both it could be for Rajeshwari, and she might be trying from other.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So the non-functional testing is more like the response time, or if there's any delay on that, or if the application is really working as expected or not. Say suppose we are thinking in the terms of a single user logging into the application. Say suppose if there's a India-Pakistan cricket match and everybody wants to watch it, so everybody has a Hotstar subscription or a ESPN Star Sports where they actually log in and check it. So when India-Pakistan match, usually the counts are very high, and there is always a chance of that sister or server getting overloaded and crash it. So that's more like your stress test and load test, which actually happen as well and has to happen for particular few systems. So those all can be categorized as your non-functional testing. So your security testing, your response
Performance
testing,
testing.
your yes, performance testing, your load testing, stress testing, endurance testing, this all fall in your non-functional because they are not exactly defined anywhere. They are not defined in your requirement specifications elaborately, but still these are important segments that have to be covered. And these all are again niche skills. So they are not very generalized. Your performance, your security, and also again niche skills. So there are separate teams for that to check it and validate them. Then it's again, we are talking about structural testing. This is more like again your code structure, which we talked about, if and else block, which we talked in a few minutes back, where it's you're checking on the structure of the code and checking that branching is happening properly or not. I mean, if you're developing a code, usually there are high chances there's a complex logic in it, and your if else is very simple thing which I was talking about. There might be many flags which are already implemented, and you would have a switch case, you would have some backend systems validating whether the flags are set or the user is enabled for such particular scenario. So these all test cases also come up as part of your structural testing. You test it whether they are all getting covered or not. And then we can move on to the other part, which is like, this is a favorite topic of anti-smoke regression retest, this whole segment again. Because when does a tester really start testing? uh, how do you know when to start? So the team expects that you're utilized throughout the project. So when the starting phase requirements and development team usually works, they expect you also to work. But when you don't have a code, what do you work? You can work on defining your test cases, understanding your requirements, getting clarifications, what you have to do, what not to do, setting up your test data, your test environment. These are all segment activities which you do. So after doing this, and when the developer says, I have deployed the code in a lower environment. So are you ready to test? Yes, of course, that's the expectation. But is the system really ready to be tested? Okay, that's where you do a sanity test. You verify whether the application or the environment is ready. If you consider the same login scenario which we talked about. So if you're having a login scenario, the first step you would do is that the URL is opening or not. First check over. Second check, okay, am I able to log in or not? Yes, I'm able to log in. Is the application clear or not? Is everything, objects are coming up, the images are coming up, or the logos are coming up? Yes. So am I able to sign off? Yes. Am I able to close the browser? Yes. This is a kind of a sanity test. You have done your sanity test and the application is ready to be exhaustively tested. That's the sanity. So what is smoke test? Smoke test is like, in addition to sanity test, you have few more applications or scenarios defined for it. Say, suppose I'm considering a banking application. Login is one. Then I check different tabs. I go to my account. I go to my statement. I go to and check my account summary. I download a statement. I sign off. So I can consider this as a smoke test. So what is again system testing? So what is system testing? Okay. Okay, we will go it later then. I put in a different category. So next is regression test. So what is regression test? Regression test is complete testing of your whole application, right? From your login to log off, every scenario, right? End-to-end flows. Okay, what does transfer of funds, in inbound of funds, failure of funds, download of a statement, incorrect password, negative cases, everything. What all has to be tested, you will do the testing, regression test. What is a retest? So when you're doing a test and when some of the test cases are failing, you have to mark your test cases as failed. So you'll mark them as failed, and along with that, you create a incident or a defect to ensure that your negative or failing test cases are to be fixed by the development team. So what? So these the failing test cases has to be retested. So those are called as retests. What is performance testing? Performance testing is part of your non-functional testing and ensure that your application is working stable across different loads. So there's a separate testing for that. You have 1x load. 1x is that's what your system is designed for. Say suppose your system is designed for 1,000 users, so that's kind of 1x load. So if you are testing it for 3,000 users, so it's like 3x load. So if you're testing it for 10,000 users, it's like 10x load. So you have different parameters to ensure that how your system is behaving. Is it able to scale up and access and allow your users to handle it, or is it behaving weird, or is it something which I have to understand and fix it? Is it really critical, or is it something I can live with? So that's something what performance testing team checks and lets us know, and that's when the business will take a decision whether to fix it or is it what they can live with. Then we have security testing. So security testing is a very niche skills and which is very popular right now, where that there are so many hackers happening, so many things breaking up your breaking into your system and leaking your information, privacy and all that is like a very hot niche skill right now, security testing. So they have public key, private keys, public certificate. They have your PKI keys, public key infrastructure keys. They have your server codes where they have MFA and all. They have so many things. I mean, that's again niche skill set. This all comes under security testing. And now very popular topic now is accessibility testing. So accessibility testing, what is accessibility testing? Accessibility testing is nothing but any user should be able to access and or have access to the application. So it's not just like any normal guy having an application. Anybody with color blindness should be able to use it. Anybody with speech impairment or vision issues should also be able to use it. And how comfortable you're designing your code so that it can be used, and how that now we have so many AI and ML bots in systems. If they can help you access the application and let the user know that these things are there, so they have some standards for that. Something like we have speech recognition and text recognition systems, which they can read it out aloud to you. So if you have seen, some blind people are still able to use their phones, right? So yeah, how is it happening? It's because you have some system or some application that can read out who is calling and what number they're dialing, what they can use and all that. So it's making more accessible to all kinds of people. So that's where accessibility testing addresses it. And the load testing, stress testing, endurance testing are all parts of your performance testing again. So load testing is what I told about 1x, 3x, 10x. Stress testing is more like you bombard your system with different loads and check where it is breaking and how it is working. So that's more of stress testing. Endurance testing is like you repeat the same load at different loads for a longer period of time and check how your system is behaving. So if you remember, we were talking about garbage collection and cleaning up of all the memories earlier in initial slides. So that's more is addressed during the endurance testing, so that your spaces are not getting filled up and your system is not crashing. So endurance testing addresses that part. Any questions? I know this is too much information, but this is really important and required. Okay, then moving on, we have different testing again. This is more on the application and scope of your testing. Okay, unit testing is more on your particular piece of code, and this is usually supposed to be done by developers. But some projects in real time don't have that, and they expect that this testing team also to include these scenarios. So it's actually not should not be that way, but it usually sometimes happen. So don't be surprised if you get into a such project. And then we have system testing, so where we have testing your application as part of your the bigger application. So suppose the developer got an option to enable download of a statement as xls file along with the pdf file. So that's one part of change. So testing that particular scenario is unit testing, and testing all parts along with this xls file is also called system testing. So you will test other features also, checking that PDF download or account statement, money transfer, all this also part of your system testing. And what is integration testing? So allowing that this file is integrated with other applications also. So you are part of this banking wealth management, then there is again some portfolio management or trades placed or anything like that. So that's called, you're testing all these applications called integration testing. So when you're testing all different segments in particular environment, we'll have different environments like I was telling you, right? In the waterfall model, we have development team, we have testing team, we have lower environments and all. So these lower environments are usually classified as SIT, UAT, pre-prod, and all wise. And it's not consistent across all the organizations. It keeps differing from project to project. So some teams might have only SIT, some teams might have only UAT, or some teams might have more than these environments also, basic environments also. So when you're testing in particular environment, it's called an SIT testing. You usually test how it is working. And UAT testing is where you usually expect an user to test it. Like if a business wants to test it, they will not test in any environments. They'll test only in UAT because they will have their valid configurations and valid test data and user accounts set it up. And usually the configurations on UAT environment should reflect more or less like your actual production. So if your production is having some 5 servers, this can be scaled down to 1 server. So if your UAT has some 1,000 accounts, this can be scaled down to 100 accounts. And all the probable, possible, actual, real-time combinations of data and configurations should be existing in UAT. That's what the expectation is. So before a code is being deployed into your production, they have to be validated in this particular environment and provided a sign off before it is deployed. So that's the actual intention of having a UAT. Sometimes this is also called as a dry rehearsal. So dry rehearsal is something like, if your team is, there are multiple teams in the projects again, right, in your client location. So everybody will be doing the code part and you will be pushing your code. Some team ABC will pushing their code, some team XYZ also will be pushing their code, and all of you have on the same date deployment. So what they usually do, they have to allow everybody, but before that you want to ensure that other changes are not impacting your testing. So you do a kind of dry rehearsal where every team will agree that, okay, we are deploying our code and we want it to be tested so that we don't find any surprises in the production day. So that's where usually happen dry rehearsal. But it's very rare case and it doesn't usually happen in all the projects. They don't have that much budget to do that. So they usually skip it. Clear here? Until here? Is it okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. I know it's getting late. I'll try to wind up this slide and stop it. Then we have migration testing. So this migration testing is more applicable when you have a major change in the application. Say suppose you have a database and it is having Oracle database, assume that, and it's on a version 12c. And Oracle has launched a new version saying it is a 19c, it is robust, and this is blah 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 stuff. We are not supporting 12c, we are supporting only 19c. So then you do a migration part from your old system to a new system, and the business will all go crazy and very worried how will it happen and all that. They want an assurance that it is working fine and no old data is deleted and no changes are impacting the users. So that's where usually happens migration testing. This can also be considered as your OS change where you're upgrading XP to 7, 7 to 10, 10 to 11. So these kinds of migration, or a migration from a mainframes application to a SAP, or a mainframes to .NET or anything. So that's all kind of part of your migration testing. And ad hoc testing. Ad hoc testing is more like, uh, no, so we are usually in real-time scenarios, what happens is that sometimes you get a production defect and they usually implement that code at very short notice and try to push that code. So we don't have the luxury of testing the whole suite again. So we usually pick up few important priority scenarios and part do additional testings to ensure that we are testing the basics part and testing few scenarios that might have been impacted because of this change and ensuring that it is working fine. So because we don't have too much time and we have to test it, and it's understood that we are doing a very limited testing. That's more of a ad hoc testing. And exploratory testing. Exploratory testing is very tricky, more like this. You need to have a background experience, a domain knowledge of your application, and before the code is deployed or before you get any updates on the application, you have joined a project recently and you do want to check how the application is working and all. So you do explore, right? You explore different features. Okay, here I'm able to log in. Here I'm able to change my settings. Here I can check my profile. That's kind of exploration. So you explore the whole system and you test parts of it. And there's many funky word here, monkey testing. So what is this monkey? Do monkeys also test? No, but it is more like there is no logic for what you test. You're simply testing. You're simply pressing some keys, or you're checking what's happening, how it is behaving, whether it's behaving as expected or not. You don't know. I mean, it's like very crazy. And you're just saying that you're just thinking, okay, is the system breaking or working? So that's how you check it. And this again, this is a favorite topic again, manual testing, automation testing. So manual testing is like what all you do manually, and if you can automate with a different set of tools, all this part is called automation, which you are all interested to learn, right? So that's where we have different industry standards, Selenium, UFT, BD, whatnot, everything, API testing and all. Then there's a very recent trend that's coming up, recent parts like A/B testing. That's more kind of like you have two versions of software for the same product. This is made more famous like during this DevOps part, where the Uber especially has come up with this part where they were focusing to push part of code to particular set of users and check how it is behaving, and push another set of code for B for another set of users and check how they're reacting for that. So this was more in the lines of your pricing. Say suppose uh, a user A wanted to book a cab and he was like very urgent and he wanted to book a premium cab. The price was high, but he still booked it. So then they want to test if he is willing to pay more than that bucks, like say it's $10. So is it paying even if it's $20? This is $30. Can I make more profit there? Okay, this particular code. How about another economical user? Is he really checking a backing off? Okay, then I want my code to behave a different way for him. So for the premium user, I can give a better car. For the economical user, I can give a normal car, normal services, but he still can come back. So I am like checking both the segments. I'm checking the behavior. It's more like patterns, like A/B testing is called. And then we have something like beta testing. So beta testing is like you're not very sure of your product, but you want to get it tested and get the early feedback from the customers before you launch it whole. So this usually happens with Google and other products where they create a product and they specifically select few customers to give it like a trial launch and let them know, okay, how it is behaving, what features can we add before they launch it for the larger segment. So Gmail and few other Google one where like such products just came into that way. And there is more like the recent trends is like chaos testing. So chaos testing is like what happens in chaos, like you don't know anything, right? But you want to check if these particular segments or parameters come into picture, how does my system behave? Can my system withstand such things? Can my system be stable and handle them? So that particular thing is called chaos testing. It's quite trendy now and people are still working few things on that. Okay, too much, I know. Any questions? Okay, if that is the case, then probably I think we'll stop now today and then probably we'll continue in the next class.
Rishi,
Yeah,
just send that recorded session to the Zoom invite meeting that you got, so that reply all
sure. Right,
and
right.
send the recorded version. Yeah, yes, so that they can go through
Sure.
it.